Hey everyone, in this video, I'm going to show you how to make other graphs using StatCrunch. The graphs that I'm going to make are going to contain categorical variables and quantitative variables. So it's really nice to be able to compare categories with just a simple click in your settings. So what I have here is a graph from another video that I had made. How many Asian people live in each census tract in Clark County, Washington? Let's say that I want to categorize this by whether the people are living in an urban census tract or a rural census tract. Now, if you look back at the categories here, urban is a categorical variable with ones and zeros. 1 means that it's urban and 0 means that it is rural. So let's go to the options and I'm going to edit them. Now, if you're making a graph from scratch from the start, these would be some of your settings that you would make right away. So in the third set of options here, it says group by and then optional. So pick your categorical variable and what you will get is a graph for each of those categorical options. So I'm choosing the urban variable and then I'm going to push compute. And what I get is multiple graphs. And I can tell because there's little arrows down at the bottom. First, I have a graph, how many Asian people live in each census tract when urban is equal to 0. So remember, it's a flag. If it's 1, it's an urban tract. It's a 0 if it's a rural tract. So these are the rural tracts only in Clark County. And this is how many Asian people live in each tract. So I know that there is one rural tract that has 100 to 149 Asian people living in that tract. If I click the arrow, then I go to the other graph. This is where urban equals 1. So this is a histogram of only the urban tracts in Clark County. And each count in this graph is another census tract. So if I hover over the second bar, there are 17 urban census tracts that have only between 50 and 99 Asian people living in those tracts. And then there are 3 urban tracts that have like nearly 800 some Asian people living in those tracts. So when I was making my graph in my previous video, I noticed that there were 3 potential outliers. And now that I'm categorizing them, I can look for those outliers and say, oh, wow, 3 of those outliers are for urban tracts, and there are no outliers for rural tracts. So let's go back to the options and edit. And I'm going to group by a different variable, LA 1 in 10. So that means low access at 1 in 10 miles. Click that, compute. So here's the flag for no, because it's a 0. LA 1 in 10 means no, I have not met this quality. And then LA 1 in 10 equals 1 means yes, this quality has been met. So I went back and read the definition of LA 1 in 10 again, because I wanted to refresh myself what exactly it meant, because there's a lot packed into these little symbols right here. So LA means low access. What does low access mean? It means, according to our data set, that at least a third of people can't get close to a grocery store. So at least 33% or more people have to, either 2 things happen. They have to travel more than 1 mile to get to a supermarket if they are urban, or the 10 means that they have to travel more than 10 miles to get to a supermarket if they're rural. So to be considered a low access census tract, it means that we have to have a significant portion, at least 33% of the population, having a hard time getting to groceries. So what's our big takeaway here? In this graph, these are the low access tracts. And if I look at the pattern of the data, it seems like these low access census tracts tend to have the number of Asian people. It centers around a median of 187 Asian people in those tracts. So that's low access tracts tend to have, up here 200-ish Asian people per tract. Let's contrast that. Let's go to the other graph. These are the non-low access tracts. So that means that these people have an easy time getting to the grocery store. So while there might be some people who have to travel more than a mile or more than 10 miles to get to groceries, we certainly don't have very many people. So maybe it's only like 10% of the tract people, or maybe only 5%, or heck, 30%. So now, when it's easier to get to the grocery store, the count of Asian people is actually over here, the median is lower. So the median is at 93. So isn't that interesting? When there's easy access to the grocery store, there are more census tracts that don't have many Asian people living in it. But when we do have census tracts that are low access, there are more Asian people living in each census tract. I wonder what other patterns we could find in the data. And that's something that you can explore as you start making graphs and using categorical variables to look for patterns.